I'm Rachel, and I'll be your chairperson for today. We've got an excellent agenda today, two brilliant speakers. Duncan White from Horizon 2. Duncan, tell us a bit about what Horizon 2 do and where your interest in quality scores are.
Well, I mean, we've spent an awful lot of 15 plus years, I think, helping organisations improve the conversations that they're having with their customers, and we've worked with manual analytics, we work with speech analytics, and then as the world becomes more digital, so is our remit. So we worked across, across many different markets, from police forces to financial services to government debt collection. But it's all been about understanding the impact of customer behavior, the impact of communication on customer behavior, and how you can use that to benefit the organizational performance. So QM, as a part of that, is very much in scope. So if you're showing people the bits of the conversation that are important, then those tend to be the bits that you need to monitor and keep an eye on. So
Brilliant. Oh, well, thanks for joining us today. And our second speaker is Charlene Gillam from NICE Systems. Charlene, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do within NICE.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I am actually a product manager at NICE. I own the quality management product for the organization. I've been with the company 10 years, started out in business consulting. The role of a business consultant at NICE is to help our customers really realize the full value of our product, QM with the specialization, but also we have a full suite of WFO solutions, including work management, performance management, and interaction analytics. So really helping customers realize the full value of the product. And now I own the QM solution at NICE. So it was a good transition.
Brilliant. So today we have going alongside this is our chat room, which is on callcenterhelper.com/chat. The added bonus of being in the chat room is that you can download the webinar slides and also kind of ask your own tips and questions. The best tip today will win a bottle of champagne. Actually, this champagne. We'll be sending that out and we'll be announcing it on the webinar. So make sure you use hashtag tip for a tip and hashtag question for a question. There is a replay and slides that will be available later on this afternoon, and that's available on callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. So we've been asking in the chat room, in one or two words, what is the biggest challenge you face with quality scoring? A few people, we've had quite an interesting selection. So Hayley says supervisor buy-in is our biggest challenge. Elena says we're trying to get sound and are getting engaged with logging into the that's something completely
I think that's a problem.
Apology.
That's not a tip, is it?
No, I'm just reading. So yeah, we'll go on to a poll, I think. So if you'd like to, I'll launch it now. How do you calculate your quality scores? Do you do a pass or a fail? Do you do red, amber, green, gold, silver, bronze, a scale of 0 to 10, or a scale of 0 to 100? I'll launch that now. And Duncan, what do you think will be if you were a betting person?
Well, as we
I know you're not.
I've never bet in my life, rather boringly, but I would say red, amber, green would be.
Okay, and Charlene, have you any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to say a scale of 0 to 100. Most compliance programs I've seen are pass-fail, but we've seen a good majority that are in that percentage-based scoring.
Okay, I'll close it down.
So we did work with one company that had a 0 to 100 scale to 3 decimal places, actually. So it was
fab. So as you can see, it was 25% pass or fail, 22% red, amber, green, 5% gold, silver, bronze, 11% 0 to 10, and Charlene, well done, 13% 0 to 100. So that was very interesting to hear. I will hide that now. So delighted to be able to pass over the baton now to Duncan White from Horizon 2, who's going to take us through his top tips for driving up quality scores. So I will make you a presenter.
Show screen 2. Okay. What have you got then?
We've just got your background at the moment.
Okay, hang on. That should fire up. Okay.
Brilliant.
Okay, so welcome everybody. As I said during the introduction, QA has been a very important part of our programs over the last 15 plus years, and has always been in scope. So with that in mind, we'd just like to spend 20 minutes to sharing some of my thoughts about how you improve quality and quality management in the contact center. So starting with this quote from Peter Drucker, who you've probably heard of, there is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all, which is a slightly mangled statement, but what it obviously means is there's no point in getting better at doing something that is actually of little or no benefit. So another quote maybe says it better: rowing harder doesn't help if the boat is headed in the wrong direction. So you can see where I'm starting to go with my view of quality, or sometimes how quality is actually set up. Hang on, I've got to press the right button here. So the reason that we say that, and why I think it applies to quality, if you just look at this very quick example. So if you have an inbound operation with agents working 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, and that they're on the phones for maybe 7 of those with 50% utilization, over a month they will make between 11 and 1,200 calls. So 1,155 calls per month for this particular example. So say you are doing manual evaluation, you sample 8 calls for that agent over that period and are rating them on a 0 to 10 point scale, although we now know that 35% of you are on a 0 to 100 point scale. The stats calculation tells us that the score that you give that agent at the end of the month, you've marked these 8 calls, is representative of the score that you would have given them if you had listened to all of the 1,155 calls, but unfortunately has a confidence level or a margin of error of 34.5%. So you've scored this agent, say 5, across their 8 calls. What we're saying that actually, in reality, this agent would score, if you listen to all of their calls, somewhere between 1.5 and 8.5. So 1.5 is obviously pretty abysmal. 8.5 is actually pretty good. But in practice, of course, we haven't actually learned anything about the performance of this agent, and certainly nothing that we could or should have any confidence in that we can initiate actions such as coaching or training in order to change. So if you apply the same across, say you've got 100 agents doing the same, effectively all the time, effort and expertise and resource that you've applied to analysing those 800 calls has provided very little information which can be actioned at the level of the individual agent. It will tell you something about the overall performance of your operation, but in terms of overall agent information, it's very limited. So we're going to jump straight in with a second poll now, just to keep you all interested and occupied. How many calls per agent per month do you evaluate? So is it 2, 4 or more, 7.7% or more, which is a very specific number, all of them or none of them?
Fab.
So I hope it's not none of them.
I'm sorry?
I said, gosh, I hope it's not none of them.
Yes. Well, you could argue it's a valid strategy.
Yeah.
So what are we thinking is going to come out as the top one? Or what are you hoping to see, Duncan? More to the point.
Well, it fits my story better if it's 2, but so, I would imagine it's maybe 4 or more. But
yeah, that's probably 4 or more based on our benchmarks, I think. But yeah, you definitely would like to see more, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So I will close this down now and share the results. So yeah, 4 or more was the winner with 56%. 2 at 26, 10% was 7.7% or more, and then equally was all of them and none of them. So very a spread of that. So I'll pass the baton back to you, Duncan, so you can go through your reasonings behind asking the question.
Okay, let's go that.
Fab.
Super. Have you got...
Yep, we've got your poll screen at the moment. There we go.
Okay. So, are we wasting our time? So 4 calls per agent per month. Fantastic. But your margin of error increases from our 8. It's now 48.9%. So on a 0 to 10 scale, you're actually going, you know that your agent is somewhere between 1.1 and 8.9 in terms of, again, if you're scoring them 5 over the 4 calls a month. 2 calls per agent per month, actually, you might as well not bother because your margin of error, plus or minus, is bigger than the scale that you're actually scoring them on. So you may as well be throwing your darts blindfolded, in case you're wondering what the relevance of the dartboard was. The 7.7%, so to get to a point where you have a confidence level of plus or minus 10%, i.e. to be confident that a score of 5 really does sit somewhere between 4 and 6, you'd need to listen to, in this particular example, and score 89 calls per agent per month, or 7.7% of their calls, in order to make sure that was representative. Obviously, this is very difficult in terms of, particularly if you're doing it manually. So, as I said, it could be a valid strategy to say, why are we wasting our time on trying to get better at something that's actually very inaccurate? And we did work with a telecoms company back in the early 2000s, actually, who took that view, and the minute they stopped doing any QM, all the call center key performance metrics just fell off a cliff. So I wouldn't advocate that as a strategy, because I think, you know, there's another adage, you know, what gets measured gets done. If people know they're being scored, they're being measured, particularly if there's an incentive around it in terms of, you know, they know what they've got to do in order to get a good score, then they'll be doing that, you know, on their calls anyway. So because they know they're being measured. So whereas it might not give you the individual agent information that you need in order to, you know, to really improve your agent capability, it is giving you valuable information, and it is actually driving people towards the right sort of behavior. So my top tip 1 is to use technology where you can, as you might expect on this sort of seminar. But, you know, even if you're not, you know, you can't invest in the latest tools and the latest analytics and the ability to do that, there are ways you can use technology to improve the effectiveness of sample distribution. So if you have, you know, you can weight by agent, by call type, by outcome, by feedback. If you've got a voice of the customer program or anything around, you know, anything giving you information about, you know, what might be a good or bad call, use that to improve the effectiveness of your sample. If you've got call recording metadata, you can use that to push certain types of calls for listening, or you can use dynamic sampling to vary, you know, QA by agent at a very base level. So if you have a normal distribution of quality over your agent population, you obviously should be sampling more the people who are below average than the people who are above average. That just sort of makes sense. Speech analytics can help, obviously, even if you're not using them to, you know, to score 100% of your calls. You can use them to find calls that need scoring manually, you know, calls that are important to you as an organization. You can prioritize, you can use this as a sample tool, but of course it can also analyze 100% of the calls and give you the feedback by agent, by team, by operation. I know, you know, speech analytics, I know its limitations. I was head of analytics at Verint for 2 years when analytics was first coming in. So, and have since worked as Horizon 2 with all the other platforms from, you know, Autonomy to Nice. And, you know, the truth is they're actually a lot better now than they were initially. So if you've looked at speech analytics in the past and disregarded it, I would suggest that it is worth going back and having another look. It has become more affordable, and, you know, the speech engine, the base speech engine, which is the key to getting, you know, the good output out of this, is actually a lot better than it was when I first started. The other thing I would say, you know, where we've tried to use analytics to represent or reproduce an in-house quality system, the 3 times I've tried to do that, the problems have always been with the in-house system, in fact, and the way the calls are being scored internally. I think someone touched on the point, you know, that people actually, they use their, or the problem with getting, you know, calibration effectively across a section of calls. So people tend to score people that they know better than they are, because they know they are better than they are, if you know what I mean. So actually replicating that, you can't do it with analytics, because it doesn't, the scores that you're giving calls don't match what's actually going on in the call. So you can use analytics to find problems with your in-house system. And compliance obviously is particularly good because of the way that compliance tends to be measured and constructed. which takes us on to tip 2, which is actually that quality needs to be more than just compliance. And this is a framework that we've used, we've developed over the last 15 years. You know, when we started, it was all about customer experience. So what's the impact of the conversation on the customer? So a good call then, in quality terms, was a call that scored well in terms of customer experience. We've actually extended that that now, and I think these are the 6 groupings that you need to consider when you're building a quality framework. So obviously, yes, you've still got the customer. What's the impact on the customer experience? But also, you've got business metrics. You have your contact center to. It's there for a reason, and it's there to do, to deliver value for you as a business. Whether that's selling more, acquiring customers, retaining customers, solving problems. You still have business metrics that you have to. That the contact center is there to meet. Efficiency is very important. Again, from a quality angle, the cost of customer contact is increasingly large as you get more and more multi-channel. Contacts seem to be aggregating rather than diminishing. So how you handle those, how you handle those efficiently should also be a part of a quality program. Employees. This is actually looking at it from the employee, so not as what's the impact of an employee engagement on the quality, but actually how does the type of calls you're asking your agents to handle, how does that affect them? So what's the impact on the contacts and on the employees? So in terms of driving employee attrition, driving unauthorized absence, recognizing the impact of what you're asking people to do. And the impact that has on their performance is an important part of quality. And the last 2, insight is less often in a quality program, but you should be mining all your content. There's an awful lot of structured and unstructured information in contacts, whether you're doing that again with technology or whether you're doing it 5-bar gates or whatever. You should be collecting, because people are telling you what they think of you, what they think of your products, what they think of your competitors. So there's a whole raft of stuff that should be being mined out of that. And then yes, the 6th one brings us back to compliance, which is obviously a very important part of quality, but it's not the only part of quality. And what you have to do is try and achieve a balance in all of these. I mean, we've done stuff back in the old days with PPI. So the bad old days of PPI when we worked with a bank that their regulation department or the compliance department had made the conversation so tight and so compliance heavy in order to try and make PPI look like a fair product, that they weren't making any sales. So, so balancing the regulation and the business outcomes was something that we tried to do and make the conversation, more balanced. I'm not sure particularly we did a particularly good job on that, but so when you're building an evaluation form, you need to think of all of these and not just compliance. And these are all outcomes that are impacted directly by conversations. But my tip 3 is you actually link your evaluation to the drivers of those outcomes rather than the outcomes themselves. So it does need a bit of analysis. You do need to understand what those drivers are. In terms of what is driving the so what's causing higher CSAT scores, what is it that's driving higher sales, what is it that's driving higher employee attrition, what are the drivers of those outcomes, and build those into your evaluation process and not the outcomes themselves. Get your data from wherever you can and test and learn and innovate. I'm a big fan of testing and learning innovation, because you don't know what you don't know. And trying to work on received wisdom is really not the best way to go. But then you also have to be, it is also important to isolate those drivers that can be influenced, particularly at an agent level. So people talk a lot about measuring customer satisfaction, but we found that actually within customer satisfaction there are a number of subgroups that you really need to understand. So if you've got an overall customer satisfaction score, what has driven that? Is it satisfaction with the agent, satisfaction with the process, or satisfaction with the outcome? So you can have an agent that's done a very good job, but the customer wasn't satisfied with the outcome. They didn't get their refund, they didn't get their replacement, nothing the agent can do. The process was fine, but it comes back with a negative score on customer satisfaction. So you need to understand, what can be influenced, what can't. Another example of that is looking at customer experience. Again, it's still, yes, it's where we started, but it's still a very important measurement within a contact center. And one of the outcomes of our the depth of our analyses over these years is this sort of predictive formula. And very often, you know, you can predict a level of customer experience if you can measure task resolution. So did I get my inquiry answered? Did I get my fault resolved? Customer effort, how hard was it for me to get my my task resolved? And then a final bit with judgmental heuristics, which is our own methodology, which is based on some academic frameworks that you might be aware of, such as prospect theory or peak end theory. Or if you've read Nudge, for example, you know, it's based on the same behavioral economic principles that people actually don't think as logically as they should, and certain parts of an experience therefore have a greater impact on their perception of an experience than others. So if you're trying to improve customer experience, this is actually highlighting that, you know, the important bits of the call that you should be focusing on for maximum effect. So entry, first impressions count. It's a truism because it's true. Exit, you know, that's the last bit that they remember, the recency effect. So you should be doing that. So, you know, just some pointers there in terms of, you know, the sort of outcomes, or sorry, the sort of drivers of outcomes that if you drill in and you keep drilling in and you keep honing it, then you can start to find out, yes, these are the things we should be measuring people on. Continuing on that theme, this is an analogy we've used. So, you know, if you're trying to improve a song, there are three parts to a song. So the analogy we use, comparing a conversation to a song. So if you're trying to improve a song, you know, you've got the pianist, you've got the tune they're playing, and you've got the piano in this particular instance. So you can either, the pianist can go away and practice, you can train the pianist, you can change the tune they're playing because you don't like the tune, or you can change the piano, the equipment that they're playing it in. If you change that to the components of a good conversation, it's broadly the same. You've got the agent, you can train your agents can practice, they get better the longer they're with you. You can change the conversation structure, and I'm not talking about scripts or anything like that, but just about the way that you structure conversations, the way you use things such as anchoring and framing and signposting and stuff like that. And then you've got the environment, which in this case isn't actually the physical infrastructure, but it's just recognizing that a conversation takes place within a wider environment. So within a longer customer journey, you know, you might have some communication that goes out to a customer that causes them to ring in, which you then have other activities after the conversation. So recognizing actually by changing the environment that the conversation is taking place in, you can actually improve the outcome of that conversation. So tip 4 is actually understanding the best lever to drive improvement, and it might actually not be your agent or the agent's skills. You know, there's a thing called fundamental attribution error, where people assume that actually an individual has a greater control over the output of a situation than they do. These are some cognitive biases. Cognitive biases are well documented. You know, there are the bigger parts of our brain are older, they're more emotional, they're rational and faster than the newer, smaller sort of neocortex bit that deals with thinking and planning and decision making. So that's what I mean about the perceptions of an experience aren't necessarily logical. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of these. Some of those you might recognize, and some of them are a bit more ephemeral perhaps. But so, you know, your customers aren't as rational as they think they might be, and many decisions that we think are unbiased and rational are in fact based on automatic and immediate reactions, which can be driven by the situation, the conversation, and the context of the conversation. So changing the structure of the conversations and taking advantage of some of these biases, like anchoring and framing as well, as well as the way you signpost, present, choice, and summarize, etc., can have a much bigger immediate effect on your contact center operation than actually focusing in on the individual. So just as sorry, that might sound a bit academic, but actually in practical terms, we work with a broadband technical support operation that delivered the final engineering piece of their solutions through a third party, and they were getting absolutely hammered for their customer satisfaction scores. If you think back to that customer experience formula, you know, there's little we could do to influence resolution because it was relying on somebody else. So all we had to play with was the effort and the judgmental heuristic piece, or the behavioral economic piece. So we changed the conversation structure, focusing on the key parts of the conversation, the bits that, and how we presented choice, how we formulated what the next steps were going to be, and we improved their reported CSAT from 22% to 64% in a month. Yeah, and immediate. So very often, if you want to make significant change, it's actually easier to change the conversation structure or the tune than it is to actually train the pianist, particularly if your agent, and most agents now, to be fair, are pretty good, aren't they? And I think, most people, it's very rare that you actually get a poor agent, I think, in terms, and a poor experience is often driven by stuff that's outside of the agent's influence. So tip 4, understand there might be other things that you can change quicker in order to get a more immediate effect. So those are my 4 top tips. Use technology where you can. Quality has many faces, so don't just focus in on one of them. You need to build a balanced scorecard. Build your evaluations on behavior that will drive those positive outcomes and not on the outcomes themselves. We've had some very good examples of that, but I'm running out of time, so I can't tell you too much about that. And change your tune and see immediate impact. So use cognitive biases to your advantage, and there are people doing that and doing that very effectively. Bonus tip 1, you should also reward your agents based on behavior and not outcomes. Particularly, I think that's quite popular in a regulated environment, where particular sales environment where they don't want people to be getting an outcome or a sale by any means possible. They actually want them to be doing the right. And to be fair, if you allow for variations in customers and customer intent, if you have your agents repeatedly doing the right thing, then more often than not they'll get the right outcome as a result. And bonus tip 2, which is what I actually thought about this morning, only because we've done this for a couple of people. Think about outsourcing your quality. If this is too difficult, if you don't, people are outsourcing everything nowadays. We've done purely manual outsourcing for people. We've done automated outsourcing for people, and there are other people that are doing it as well. So it is a growing capability. So if you wanted to look at saying somebody else will just set you service level agreements and you go away and deliver it, then that's another option. So that is the end of my 20 minutes, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Duncan. Okay. A lot of information there. In case you missed it, you can download the webinar slides on callcenterhelper.com/chat. But also, the chat room has been very busy. So we'll go through some top tips and questions now. We've had a question in from Charlie, who's asked, what is better or most common setup? Team leaders doing call scoring and coaching, or a separate quality team person doing the call scoring or coaching? Duncan, I don't know if you, obviously this kind of goes back to your bonus tip, really.
Yeah, no, I think, the answer is you get both, don't you? Personally, I prefer it if the quality team is separate. So team leaders should be focused on training and coaching and improving the performance. I think it's very difficult to get independent scoring if the team leaders are scoring the people that are then responsible for improving. But Charlene, I don't know what you think on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And in our benchmark studies, we've seen kind of an even split, but normally when there is a quality team, the team leader still owns the coaching and is responsible for the agent. So having that third party unbiased quality team opinion, quote unquote unbiased, we know they're all biased, but that third party quality team is definitely less biased than your team lead. But generally speaking, the team lead does own the coaching and development of the agent, so they have to have buy-in to the program. We'll talk a little bit about that.
Great. Lynn said, I believe that an independent team can give a better view of what's going on. So she's agreeing.
Yep.
And Christine said, yes, a team is better since the different people can pick up on different areas to improve. 1 or 2 people cannot score enough calls without all the demands on them already, which
well, that was the point someone made earlier on, wasn't it, around getting supervisor buy-in. So yes, that I think plays to that, doesn't it? So.
Emma said, it depends on the length of the call in terms of of marking it, and the feedback depends on the result. For a 3-minute call, listen to the call all the way through, so 3 minutes, mark the call approximately 3 times 3 minutes, check, listen again, times 3 minutes. So a 3-minute call to mark is 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I hope you understand that, Duncan.
Yeah, no, it sounds about right to me. Yeah, no, exactly. It's not, you can't, and this is why the problem has always been for the last 20 years. If you're doing it manually, how do you make the most of the resource you've got? Because it's not a quick process. And no, she's absolutely right. I'd be surprised if it's not longer than that, actually. Yeah.
Wow. Sue said our team leaders are required to do 6 quality checks a day over their team. So dependent on team size, it would be roughly around 15 per analyst per month, evaluated out of 100%, with a pass/target rate of 90%, which they have an MTD figure of 90% or above. We've had a question in from VJ saying, how did you calculate the margin of errors based on the sample?
I knew someone was going to ask me that. I didn't, was the answer. But my co-founder did. And I can find out exactly how he did that and let you know if you
We'll put the answer then on our website when we have it, VJ. So
I'll make a note.
It's fairly aligned to most statistical calculators. If you key in, the number of calls that you're evaluating versus the number of calls that the agent takes, so it's pretty aligned with what I've seen in that. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Charlene.
Thanks.
Sam's asked, we're looking to reduce the amount of calls marked so we can spend more time with our agents and give them more on-the-job training so we have a better understanding of what our agents need from us by talking to them. What is your opinion on this? And do you think call scoring is effective with agents, or do you think this can be demotivating? Charlene, I don't know from a technology point of view what your thoughts are.
So I think Duncan actually touched on this. When you say that you are looking to reduce, I'm assuming that's the manual listening part. And I would just challenge both he and I have recommendations on using technology to really score more. So if you think about how far advanced technology has come and how much data you have available to you, you can actually score without listening. Certain behaviors can be monitored automatically across the organization, depending on what you're trying to drive, across all of the agents' calls. So when we're saying, when you're looking at reducing the number of calls that you're marking, I'm assuming that's a manual listening. So I would look to backfill. How can you use technology to really provide that impartial, across 100% of the interactions type of scoring model? Definitely doable. We've done it for several.
Okay. Sue said any people not reaching the target MTD are given coaching and training on areas they need to assist with. Team leaders have a delegate that also do quality checks who are trained up and also reach high quality targets. And Sue's obviously trying to win the champagne. So she said, we quality check a varied range of calls, length, time of day, etc. The long calls also need to be checked as well as the short for quality. Well,
that's interesting, actually, because people always assume that a longer call is better, and it's not. Actually, we've always found you get a sort of actually a normal distribution. So the best calls tend to be in the middle, and actually longer calls can be worse quality because there's normally someone, or it can be a sign of an agent losing their way and not being able to, and going around in circles, not being able to escalate effectively. So yeah, I think you're right.
Thank you. So we've got a question now for everyone in the audience. In 1 or 2 words, how do you calibrate your quality scores? Duncan, I don't know what you'd be suggesting for this.
Well, this goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, really. Call leveling sessions. What we do is when we've done outsourced quality, is you get a percentage of the calls scored by everybody. So if you have 10% of your calls, everyone scores, you can then use that to calibrate their scores for the rest of the. You can then look at the outliers and see who's scoring too high, who's scoring too low, and sort of reassess them. So it's like a continuous process. But yeah, I think you do need to have a base of calls that are scored by everyone, which adds to your workload, of course. But
I think everyone in the audience is agreeing. Christine said calibration meetings, as does Izette. Dan said call leveling sessions once per quarter. Elizabeth said collaboration meetings with all TMS and quality teams monthly. Lynn said audits and core leveling sessions. Yeah, a lot of sessions kind of monthly or bi-weekly. And Emma said using technology, flag a selection of calls and all evaluators mark the same call independently and not in a room together.
There you go. Yeah, bang on.
So now I'm delighted to come to the part of the agenda to pass over to Charlene, who's taking us through her top tips for quality scoring. So I will pass the baton over to you.
All right. Did we have a coaching poll too? Do we want to do that in a little bit?
Oh, yes, we do. Do you want to do that in the middle of your presentation?
Yeah,
when
we
you
can
come
do that. We can do that in the middle. That'll work. All right. Okay. So, great. So I'll go through my my 3 tips, which will bring us to 7. But I'm starting out with this kind of more or less a bonus. It's aligned to Duncan's first quote of really, if there's nothing more senseless than doing something that doesn't help your organization efficiently. So the first thing that I would say is you definitely should look at defining what you want your quality organization to represent.
Charlene, I think we can't hear you at the moment.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. Align the mission and vision for your quality team with your overall organization's mission and vision. Let me hit cancel. I've got something popping up. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. There's a lot of challenges, but I think every quality organization that I've met with, every quality team that I've met with has wanted the same thing, and that is to be relevant to the organization, to be able to support and to validate that they're able to drive organizational value. And so this comes as you're looking across your organization and what's really important to your company, and making sure that your quality department and your quality processes can align to that. So, we talked a lot about average handle time, listening to a variety of calls, long calls, short calls, average calls. That can be directly aligned to coaching and development of behaviors from an agent perspective, but also look at how you can drive some operational gains. So if you're listening to only short calls or only average calls, you're missing some of the key components that can drive operational savings. So really, start to think about all of those relevant KPIs and how your interaction selection process can help move or propel the organization forward. So we also have a couple of quotes in here. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. Or if you don't know exactly where you're going, how will you know when you get there? Quality, the one thing about quality is that it's a moving target. It's perpetual improvement. So as you start to excel or your scores start to go up, you should be really looking at how you raise the bar and adjust your standards accordingly. But always have a map and make sure that you know what you're trying to be as a quality organization. So let's get into tips 5, 6, and 7, creating a perception of fairness. So this is a little bit of a staggering stat. 35% of agents in a poll don't trust, or employees do not trust the company that they work for. When you have an environment of distrust, it breeds has a lot of different impacts. Agent retention is one, but also imagine keeping the agents that don't trust the organization imagine keeping them and the contagiousness of their attitude and their distrust of the company. And I think quality plays a role in this. Again, if our program is viewed as biased or unfair, it can create distrust and you get that perception of its big brother, right? So increasing transparency. We've talked a lot about calibration sessions. Getting the agents involved in the process is a key one here, but even opening up the doors to communication. It's not just dictating to agents, these are the quality standards, this is what we expect you to follow, but getting them involved. These are people that can contribute and can tell you probably more about your organization than anyone else. You know, they know what's going on, and so really giving them a voice and a seat at the table can bring this fairness into perspective. Taking a holistic view of quality. So agents that handle interactions across channels, we should be looking across channels and across all activities and knowing and understanding the overall experience. Here's a quote from Harvard Business Review about the residual impacts of having a trustworthy environment. Employees in high trust organizations are more productive. They have more energy, they collaborate better with their colleagues, and they stay with employers longer than people at low trust companies. So really think about how your quality program can contribute to the trust within your organization and how that can drive so much more than just agent performance. You're looking at retention and really impacting the organization, the organizational environment. So tip number 6, take a slightly different approach and involve the team. So this again is giving the agents a seat at the table. They can't improve their performance if they're left in the dark. We're strong proponents of frequent coaching, and we'll talk a little bit about coaching style, but we want to make sure that we're encouraging involvement and we're encouraging the agent's ability to participate in the program. So using best practice examples, customizing your coaching delivery, using different teaching strategies to optimize comprehension, and really turning your entire team into stakeholders. So driving things like self-assessments, even peer assessments. Someone in the chat room had mentioned having some senior agents on a team who are involved in the scoring process as well. But enabling agents to feel comfortable reaching out to their peers for guidance. And then just really setting up an environment where employee feedback is frequent and is structured, so they know that they have a voice. Okay, so we were going to go to a poll on coaching.
Fab. So I'll launch the poll now, which is how often? Oh, there we go. How often does an agent advisor have a coaching session in your organization? So we've got daily, weekly, monthly, occasionally, or never. Charlene, I don't know what you'd be hoping for.
Well, I would be hoping for daily, but I'm going to say we'll probably see monthly. Is what I've seen is that there is a monthly structured session that generally happens. But let's see what the definition of coaching is with our participants.
Right, we'll just, I think Charlie in the chat room said not often enough, so that I think kind of sums up people's feelings. So we'll close that down now and share the result. So yeah, 54% was monthly, 26% weekly, 16% occasionally, 4% never, and 0% daily. So yeah, as you can see, one of Charlene's tips is getting your coaching more into your business. So I'll hand the baton back to you, Charlene. I might have to hide the poll first. There we go.
Okay, are you? Nope, I'm not able to get back to share my screen here.
I will.
Unless you're seeing it already.
Ooh. I'll make you the presenter again. There we go. Yep. Need it in full screen, but
How's
there
that?
we go. Perfect.
All right. So we said monthly on coaching. Monthly is the structured, required. We sit down with the agent and have a one-on-one session, but I would challenge that coaching can happen daily if you make it important to your organization. The drop by at the desk, the little tips and tricks, or the how are you doing today, anything can be deemed a coaching session. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be that structured 1 hour or 30-minute monthly. Really encourage your supervisors to do that regularly. Let's talk a little bit about learning styles, though. So coaching is not a one-size-fits-all. Just like in the classroom, you have different learning styles in the contact center. You have agents that are visual learners, that are auditory learners, or that are very tactile learners. And so really encouraging those that are delivering the coaching to take a unique approach that is catered to the agent can have a much bigger impact on agent performance and organizational metrics overall. So think about the visual learners and how they learn by demonstrations, by dashboards, by charts. The auditory learners play best practice recordings, let them hear what they sound like on a call, and engage in discussion with them. So that's where the verbal discussions become much more important to the auditory learner. And then for tactile, these role plays and hands-on exercises and involving them in self-assessment. Also, one thing that works for the tactile learner is actually teaching. If you can put them into an environment where they teach, they become more expert in what they're teaching. So really think about that as well. But it's not often we see a customized approach based on agent learning styles, and it can have a pretty big impact. The other thing, again, about getting agents involved in the process is we recommend a 360-degree approach on this. So usually, when we're doing the evaluation process, it's this cycle that we're really good at. We complete an evaluation form, the supervisor reviews, the supervisor delivers the coaching to the agent, and then delivers the agent feedback, and that cycle repeats itself. So from the evaluation and the overall coaching process, this is a cycle that is traditional QM. But what we need to do is take it back the other direction. So once the agent receives feedback on the interaction, have them complete a self-assessment or complete their own evaluation form. And review that with the supervisor and let the agent give input on the process and calibrate against the supervisor. So again, the more you get them involved, sometimes it's also, you get that grass is greener on the other side. It's easy for QA to sit there and score calls. Not so much. So again, get the agent understanding the quality process and why it exists, and allow them to give input into the process. So a couple quotes here. Tell me and I forget, teach me I may remember, involve me and I learn. So involve them and they will get it. And we now accept the fact that learning is a lifelong process of keeping abreast of change. The most pressing task is to teach people how to learn. And so lastly, and this tip should go relatively quick because I think Duncan covered it as well, it's technology. How do we leverage all of the technology that we have to really influence and impact our quality program? And analytics is a big part of that. Analytics can enable you to increase fairness. Again, as Duncan said, you don't have the human ear, the biasness. I have certain pet peeves, and I know when I would listen to calls and score calls, those pet peeves would come right out, whether I liked it or not. And my ear was tuned to identify those things that I was trying to drive the most, which can create a situation of unfairness. So using technology to drive accuracy, not only accuracy, but efficiency. So we talked about decreasing the manual listening. So think about how technology can be used to score certain behaviors that are important to your organization, and then it can listen, quote unquote, listen to every interaction. And you've got a benchmark, and you've got agents that are above or below benchmark, and that gives you a good indication of where coaching, training, development needs to happen. When you're looking at the trends and the overall agent performance in comparison with their peers across 100% of the interactions. And it's not just speech analytics. You know, there are desktop analytics, there's IVR analytics, there's a lot of data in the contact center. If our quality organizations can get their hands on that data, you can do a lot more analysis, and you become much more valuable to the organization as you're looking across all of those interactions and all of those data points, and really analyze you know, what's happening on the interactions to produce the desired outcome. So really think about how you can use technology. And if I were having this conversation with you 5 years ago, I think we'd probably have a lot of naysayers, like, we can't stop, we can't do analytics-driven quality. This was the mindset 5 years ago, but we've definitely seen a rise in organizations that are adopting this type of quality program, or at least using it to contribute to the quality program. Many use cases and case studies where customers have even become more deliberate in the interactions that they're selecting. They're using things for the manual listing process. Identifying things like collection effectiveness is a good one. Being able to compare your top and bottom performers and see what are the differences in behaviors, and how do I turn my bottom 20%, bring them up to the top 20, or at least into the mid-range. So really think about all of the data points that you can use to really increase your efficiency and your effectiveness of your quality program. So in summary, my 3 tips are all summarized here: creating a perception of fairness, getting agents involved in the process, and then leveraging technology and analytics, not just voice analytics, but any type of data that you have and you're capturing, feeding that into your overall quality program and becoming more analysts.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Charlene. So we'll now go back over to the chat room so we can have a look at what people have been asking about. So we've had a tip from Terry saying it's not one size fits all. So when giving feedback, you need to tailor the feedback to the person and get them to think of how they can improve and where they went wrong. Then get them to tell you what they would be doing to ensure that they make the change. And don't forget to praise those that are good and share their skills with the rest of the group. I think that one's quite nice. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I would follow that up with, you know, knowing and understanding. You know, with agents, sometimes it's a skill or will perspective. So knowing whether this is an agent skill thing or an agent will thing can really help in delivering the right level of feedback in the right way. Agreed.
The interesting thing about that tip actually is the one about get them to think about how they can improve. Sorry, get them to tell you what they're going to do, because in terms of getting people to comply with a course of action, if you can tell them or ask them to tell you how. So if you want to get someone we did some work getting someone, making people turn up on time for appointments. So if you get them to talk you through how they're going to get there, so they visualize the journey, then they were far more likely to actually turn up on the day to do it. So this is a variant of that. So you get people to step you through or take you through the steps that they're going to take to make the change, and that then makes the change more likely to happen. So that's a good one.
But Charlie's also said, I found where call scoring is demotivating, it's due to either poor scoring methods or criteria, or number of scoring/coaching sessions are too low. So his tip is revisit and rewrite your QA scoring sheet with the advisor's help. Duncan, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of picking up everything we said, isn't it? You know, if you're scoring the wrong things in the wrong way, you know, it's, as Charlene was saying, you know, you're not going to get people to think that's very fair, and that's going to, if it's not fair, it's going to be, you know, demotivating. And then, you know, all the stuff around motivation, around extrinsic motivation, you know, giving people the skills to improve, which is what you're talking there on, you know, scoring and coaching, you know, is a huge motivator. So, you know, people like to master a skill. So, yeah, I would, you know, in that particular circumstance, I would say, yeah, dump the scoring and focus on the coaching.
Yeah.
Or how about repositioning that quality is all about the agent? I mean, if you let them know that this program exists to make you successful, I mean, that's the starting point, right, is that definition. Quality exists to make sure that you're successful at your job. And repositioning it from the start and then making sure that everything from the criteria to the delivery of the feedback is aligned to that message. Definitely can help with motivation.
Yep.
Eric said you didn't mention gamifications for agents. Does it have any direct relation to better QA? Charlene, I don't know.
I think Duncan actually, his bonus tip was related to reward and recognition, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, gamification is a much overused term, isn't it? And we've done, yes. I mean, gamification is an extension, I guess, of behavioural economics, or sort of, understanding. And it is this thing about, what motivates people and how do you build that into a gamification program. Gamification isn't what it isn't is all, points and prizes and badges and stuff like that. It's understanding, what is it that makes people get so engaged, when they're partaking in a game, and how do you replicate that on the day-to-day activity within a contact center. So, I mean, it has been bastardized slightly, I guess, in terms of how it's used. But it's a fantastic technique if used properly.
VJ said, I think the calls sampled should be in line with what KPIs you'd want to address, and the questions on forms also aligned.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Charlie's asked, how do you align QA scoring across all channels? So calls, emails, social media, and web chat. My team handle all channels, and I'm trying to make sure all channels have the same focus, even though the medium differs. Charlene?
Yeah, so there's probably a standard set of criteria that are like organizational expectations, regardless of channel. But I do expect that your expectations across channels would vary slightly. So whether something is being delivered via voice or via email or web chat, I would imagine that some of the criteria on your form would change. You would have some standards, but there would be some expectations that differ. So most of the time, I don't see one overall quality form that addresses all the channels. But they do have some shared criteria across all of those.
Great.
Yeah, no, I think. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, carry on.
No, it's just about to build on what Charlene was saying. I think there is that difference. But at the end of the day, if you are thinking about outcomes, there's a lot of similarity as well. So, they all, as far as your customer is concerned, they're not bothered really about the channels they're using. They'll still make their own decision about whether that was a good experience or not. So, I think you do need to look at it from your customer perspective and not necessarily from an internal perspective only. So,
Charlie's actually just written in the chat room, thanks Charlene, great answer. So there we go. Anne-Marie's asked, she said, do not ask agents to take on board too many improvement opportunities at the same time. Quality is a marathon, not a sprint, which is something I quite like.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
VJ said, I think self-evaluation is powerful. This could help agents reflect on the behaviour process and would aid us in helping them coach and feedback better.
Yeah, your feedback becomes much different when the agent is self-assessing. You can focus the discussion on where you might not be aligned on expectations versus, you use the right greeting, you use the right closing. But you can be focused on the things that maybe they just don't understand. That's, again, where it becomes that, is it a skill or is it a will issue?
I think someone in the chat room mentioned about people are very critical of themselves. So you would have to, obviously match up with what you're thinking as well.
Usually the ones you want to retain are, right?
Yeah. So Thea said, we introduce quality in the very first week of a new hire training. Later, we review the guidelines for the items that will be scored. Then finally, we provide an opportunity for new hires to participate in a mock call process where they're scored and given immediate feedback on the call. So I suppose introducing quality right from the very beginning, Charlene, is a good thing.
Yeah. Great tip.
Fab. So we're reaching the top of the hour. So I just want to ask the audience in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about the webinar? And so great opportunity. We've got the winning tip. Congratulations to Sue, who said, we quality check a very varied range of calls, length, time of day, etc. The long calls also need to be checked as well as the short for quality. So Sue will be in touch after the call. Congratulations to you. Just a reminder that the replay and slides will be available later on this afternoon. It's normally available about an hour after the webinar and is available on callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. Just a reminder that we're back next week with how to deliver consistent service across all channels. And in 2 weeks' time, we're back with Nexidia, who are a nice analytics company for the best KPIs to use in your contact center. I just want to thank our 2 speakers for today. Duncan White from Horizon 2, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
And to Charlene Gillam from Nice Systems, thank you very much for your top tips as well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.